Welcome back to another episode of the podcast, From the Depths of Darkness to the Light of Success. I am your host, Chris Swick, and on this podcast, we talk about mental health, mental illness, addictions, ADHD, eating disorders, and really anything anyone's afraid to talk about, we talk about it on this show. I believe everyone's story is valuable at the end of the day. Doesn't matter what walk of life you come from, you're all welcome on my platform. Before we get going, though, head over to YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, hit that notification button, turn it on so you do not miss an episode. You can find all episodes in full video format over on YouTube at the same name as the podcast. Head over to Spotify or Apple Podcast as well. Hit that follow and subscribe button. Leave me a review. It really helps the show grow. And you can also find me over on Instagram at Depths of Dark Side. But with no further ado, I'd love to introduce you to my next guest. We've got him coming all the way from New Mexico today, everyone. I got Louis Trivino on the show today. He's going to share a little bit about his life, the book he's written, the struggles he's had with mental health and mental illness with him and his wife as well. He shares it openly and honestly in the book he's written. I haven't read it in full yet. I can't speak about much of it, but we'll dive deep into that, Louis. First question is, though, what was the driving force for you to write your book?
What drove me to write it was to save my marriage. My wife and I, we both have mental illness, and I have not borderline personality. My wife has borderline personality disorder and some anxiety and a bunch of other issues that come with that. I have bipolar and post-traumatic stress. So she was going through trauma therapy, and her borderline personality disorder, they took away a lot of her anxiety meds. So the BPD is largely focused on anxiety. So dealing with mental trauma therapy, her anxiety is out of whack and her meds are out of whack. And people with BPD flee. We have the stand, fight, or flight. So she fled. So the best way I describe someone with BPD is, have you ever been so emotionally drained, anxious from some event that's happened in your family or in your life?
I definitely have. I've had many events in my life, whether it's me that's caused them or someone dying by suicide or being killed or
Right.
anything like that.
So a person with BPD lives with that 24/7 out of 24/7. On top of that, there's other issues that are associated with it. Fear of abandonment, even just the perceived fear of abandonment. Me walking out the door to go to work can be perceived as abandonment. So she's going through all of this stuff and then wants to run because she doesn't know how to handle it. So she's delusional from the side effects of the medicine. Her emotions are out of whack. Her anxiety is out of whack. She's going through trauma therapy. She's questioning whether she's worthy of our relationship, love, and everything. And she doesn't know much about my mental history or my health because I try to think I'm stable. I fight every day in my head, but I work at it. And I've been working at it since I was a kid. And I explained that in there. The little tiny exercises I did in my head, the little tiny things I did to convince myself that my father was not the monster I thought he was. And slowly I'm thinking outside the box from the time I could comprehend my own thoughts up to now, where my marriage of 14 years is in jeopardy because of mental health. And I do a self-analysis and I start writing in response to her actions and her words. She wanted to run away. She wanted to get away, but from what she couldn't explain. And the best way I can explain it is a computer system that's been running for a long time has all these updates and stuff coming in, and it gets to the point where it's just slow, wonky, and it needs to reset and get all those packages together again and then start up and it's running anew.
So it's basically like a hard drive and you got to hit that reset button.
Yes.
Putting your phone back to factory mode for the way you got it when you took it out of the package first. Those
Yes.
types of things. That's what it sounds like, BPD. Like you just got to hit that reset button like you
Yes,
spoke
and
of.
they go through that. But the thing is, a lot of people, from what I've read and from my wife's told me and everything, they run away and they try to get themselves grounded, but they get involved with other people who take advantage of their emotions, their situation. So they wind up going that spiral of drug abuse, addiction, promiscuity, you name it, because they want to please the person that's helping them, and that's who they are. I'd say I think my wife may have felt this because like an alcoholic has that moment of clarity when they realize they got to stop. She told me, she says, if I ever do this, take away all the money, take away everything. Don't give me anything. I need to take care of this on my own, no matter how much I get mad or throw a tantrum. So I listened, I kept that. And we did that. We sent her to her mom's. She was in her room for about 3 months. They rarely talked. She just needed to reground her emotions and everything. And she did it in an environment where she was safe and her system was reset. She came back. She's on some meds that are stable again. And we are so friggin' fine. It is crazy. We have our moments. We're a couple, but we make it work.
That's amazing. It's all about making it work. Figuring out what makes one another tick.
Yeah.
What's going to help one another, being there for one another, showing that compassion towards one another,
Yeah.
ha- active listening. Those types of
Right.
things is
In
what's
the
gonna
book
help
I
you
write,
grow in that relationship.
I write a lot of deep stuff. It's not a long book, but it's got a lot of things that make you think. And for us as men, we're raised to figure it out. Be a man, figure it out. You'll figure it out. You know what happens if we don't have the tools to figure it out? We become a man, we get into our relationships, we solve things the way that we learned how, anger, violence, silence, whatnot. And when we go to the bar, friends and family are saying, he's just being a man, he'll figure it out. They're dismissing it. We dismiss mental illness everywhere. And in fact, one in out of five every individual is mentally ill. But that statistic comes from NAMI, and it's only from people that have been diagnosed, have gone to the doctor.
But I want to challenge that too because I want it to be 5 and 5
It's
because
probably
there's
scarier,
it,
yes.
it, it has to be though because for the 1 in 5, what are the other four doing? You got to have that support system and stuff like that. So I truly believe, and I've heard other people say this lately. And I was like, they're right though. It should be 5 and 5,
It
not one
should
in
be.
five.
It should be because I think we all have a mental illness, but it's like in math, it's to what degree and what's the magnitude. We all have the propensity to be bipolar because we're trying to multifunction at one time. But at what degree do we have that bipolar activity? Are we predisposed through DNA? For me, it was my military, and I write about that, how they indoctrinate you with sensory overload, and everybody has to work as a team from the beginning of your inception into basic training all the way through your career. And then I
What
had
was
to
it like serving in the military? Did your mental illnesses show while serving, or were they more
oh, yes.
prevalent after leaving?
I went into the army growing up, raised to be a man, beat up, everything. I write about that, how I dealt with it. And then I developed an alcohol problem. I was away from home. I never experienced alcohol. I'm Native American, predisposed by genealogy to be an alcoholic, and I became an alcoholic. And I had to have that a moment of clarity, and it came from a best friend. I'm losing rank. I'm getting demoted, promoted, and so forth. I was a very good soldier, but when I was in garrison, I was a screw up. I was a drunk. And my buddy tells me heart to heart, you know what? I'm complaining because some guy got promoted and I didn't, and I was there longer than him. And he tells me, why you're not getting promoted, Trivino, is because you're a drunk. You're a fuck up. You don't do this. And I'm like, I didn't want to hear that, but I had to listen and I had to look at myself. And I didn't like it. And I had to make the decision in my head, which is the hardest thing, to stop drinking, to find a different outlet. And I did. I used exercise. I tried mind exercises because I wanted to be normal. And the job that I had required a top secret security clearance. And back in those days, if you went to the psych ward, you lost your clearance. You lost your capacity to do your job. It was almost to the point where you get kicked out of the army. So that it really did affect me. And then the traumas of war. And then the trauma of coming back and adjusting to war and adjusting from a stable lifestyle in the military where they give you food, housing, financial security, medical security for the family and everything, and you're left with nothing and you have to work at it. Ingress yourself into a civilian environment where you're not used. And
It's
then,
crazy, especially in the States. I see lots of these veterans become homeless, become addicts, living under bridges or
yes,
whatnot.
I write in
Reading these
there,
stories, and they don't even help them these days.
and there's a part in there where my brother clinically diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic. I discuss how he manipulated the system. He knew how the system worked, but to him, I see you clear as day. He'd see you clear as day, but he'd see a demon right next to you, and that's his norm. That's his norm. We'd tell him he needed to go to the doctor, and he didn't believe us. He'd ask me to fix his phone that somebody's recorded him, and I tell him there's no one there, and he'd look at me. Oh, they got you too. You're an alien, and he'd get a big old knife and put it in his pocket and walk around. We'd tell the doctors. The doctor would not listen to the family. The doctor would say, if he gets out of hand, call the police. By the time the police come, we've already criminalized the behavior. He's not a criminal. He just needs some medical support from his doctor. He was court ordered to take his medicines, but that did not have no teeth in it. And he went to the hospital, to the ER. We told him that he needed to go. We had somewhat of a family meeting and mandated it. We set boundaries, healthy emotional boundaries. He went to the VA hospital during COVID because he was not suicidal. They denied him access, but he was a known patient with schizophrenia and was shot and killed in a paranoid schizophrenic panic walking blocks away from the Veterans Hospital by police.
It's insane that I see this more often than not nowadays. It's had an incident last year up here too. It same thing. Like, gentleman needed help again. Yes, he had a knife on him. He wanted basically he told the cops, "I just want to go, just shoot me, whatever," and all these things. But this is the things that happen up here. They deny the people the help. Oh, we don't have room for you, or we don't have this, we don't have that. It's crazy to think like how hard do you have to fight
It needs
to
it,
even get some help.
what needs to happen, and this is my opinion, but that's what we're here for. We need to trigger thought and talk about mental illness. It's my opinion that the family should have some input to their family member with mental illness and stop the privatization and protecting the patient's rights over the family because it's a family unit problem. We have to deal with the loved one. We have to try and help the loved one. And as I write in the book, we love the person, you accept the illness, but we do not tolerate the bad behavior. And we can do
And
that.
I'm on board with you there for sure. And as you said, like these doctors, like they just shoo people away. It's here's a whole bunch of medication. I'm not saying you don't need medication for your
Right.
mental illness. I have it for mine as well, but it's not just about medication this, medication that. Showing compassion, showing love, showing kindness to these people. They're not just pieces of dirt or pieces of shit out there either.
They're humans. They're our family. They're our loved ones. And as a community, we should love each other. And the book focuses on unconditional love, especially when it comes to mental health issues. You have to love the person. Don't fight the illness. I can't save my wife's illness, but I can accept it. And I love her as she is. And I don't tolerate the bad behavior, and we communicate with it. But it takes patience, communication, and listening. And sometimes with mental health, with my own issues with bipolar, I got to slow it. My brain is going 100 miles an hour. I have to slow it down too.
100%, man. It's when you talk about bipolar. I've had other guests on that have had bipolar and stuff. Do you are you bipolar 1 or bipolar 2?
I'm bipolar
Okay,
1.
and what's the difference again for the people that are listening that don't know?
I don't know. I just know
Fair
what
enough.
I'm just diagnosed with what I have, and I deal with what I
Yeah.
have, and I want
Now,
to
do you have any manic episodes, Louis?
Oh,
Like,
yes.
I've talked
I
to other
wrote
guests
this
that
book,
have manic.
Manic Episode.
I have. Do you get creative? Are you very creative when you get into those
So
manic episodes? Like, you want to have inventions and shit like that?
I wrote this in 23 hours over the course of 7 days.
Wow.
And what the way it transpired is I'm dealing with
Once
this.
you get going, you're like, I'm not stopping till this is done at
Yeah,
this
my
point, eh?
wife is going through this trauma therapy and everything. I'm trying to be there for her, but she's fighting her own battles that I can't help with. And she's got these delusions, and all these things are just falling, these dominoes falling one after another. She gets catfished in her vulnerability. It's just the makings of some crazy movie. And I work for the government, so I cannot work on government time on this book. So I'm in a manic. I'm working for the government. I work my 8 hours. I come home. I work 3 hours on the book, 3 hours on chapter one. And then my cousin, who's a military veteran from war, he was my proofreader. And as he was reading it, he said it's helping him. So I wrote the book and published it in 23 hours. And it was too good to not publish that I went ahead and published it without my wife's consent at the time. I was in a manic. There's two
Now,
versions
how'd
out there.
that go
Oh,
without her consent with that story that you probably told about her in there?
so I didn't use real names. I used pseudonyms and everything
Okay.
but this is a letter to her because she said when we were dating that we have a notebook kind of love. I don't know if you've seen the movie The Notebook.
I've heard many things. No, I've seen it a few times. Who hasn't seen that with their wife or
Right.
girlfriend or on a
So she
romantic date?
so she says that we have a notebook kind of love. So she's in a mental crisis. She's in a delusional state, just like the lady was in the movie. I seen the movie, didn't read the book. So I'm writing this letter to try and bring her back to reality and have her second think of what she's doing, or maybe even try to give her some cloud of support to say, "Hey, I've been there, I've done that. You don't know this much about me," that kind of thing. So it was a notebook of love to her, and there's a letter to her explaining all of that. After I tell my story, I leave it at that, and the last chapter, I give a bunch of advice, lessons I've learned over time with the relationship, with myself, and the situation, and I'm working on being a better man, my man, but I'm doing it with positive outlets rather than negative ones that I chose over the years. I give some advice to men. I try to tell men we need to make mental health our priority, especially if we're the base and the pillar of the relationship. If we're the rock of a relationship, we need to be more stable mentally and emotional than anyone else in the family just for that reason alone. And if we're raised to be a man and we ain't figured it out, that's two strikes against us.
Why is that two strikes against us if we
Well,
haven't figured it out,
if
Louis?
we haven't figured it out and we're the base of the filler in the relationship, we've already failed at two things right there just by default alone because we're not trying to improve ourselves and try to make ourselves better with our mental health and our relationship and being the base of the family.
That makes sense. I agree with you there to an extent, but I
Yeah,
see your point and stuff, and for sure, no, and I
you know,
don't disagree with you at all, man.
and and I
Let's
say,
go ahead.
it's important for us to just talk to someone, maybe once a year to a therapist. I'm 53 years old. I just learned about healthy boundaries not too long ago. We're never too old to learn.
I love it, man. I'm always learning, trying to learn something new
Yeah.
every day if I can as well. Healthy boundaries are huge. How important are those healthy boundaries today, Louis?
Oh man, they are very important. I wish I learned them when I was younger.
I set them with people at work, whether it's my bosses or I got whether it's not answering emails after I leave work. I really try not to answer emails. I don't give a shit if it's something to do with a car. It can wait till the next day or with what I do for my career and stuff. On the weekends when I leave, I screw whatever. I'll shut off that app or whatever the emails. I don't care. Monday morning it can wait till it doesn't need to be
Right.
answered right away.
I agree 100%.
Can't fix it. The store's not open. I can't bring you in to fix anything. Like we're closed for 2 days. Sorry.
If you can't fix it, don't worry about it. But if you want something that you can fix and you can change it, you have to want to change it. That's the hardest part
Exactly.
in our own heads. We fight with ourselves so much.
Yeah, no, exactly. And if you want the change, you have to go after it, like you said. If there's something there that you can change or that you want to change, go get it. But that is the hardest part. We fight those demons. We fight the Jekyll and Hydes up top there. Gets some days it is hard.
Oh, some days I have to fight to get myself out of the bed, but I go through this little mantra. I get up, I force myself to get in the shower, and I tell myself in the shower, I'm washing away the negativity that I'm bringing that day. And as I'm drying off and clean up, I'm feeling fresh and clean and I'm feeling new. And that's what gets me through that one moment there. And it's just simple things like that every day that I go through just to keep myself, as I call myself, normal.
For sure. And saying those mantras or saying those positive affirmations and stuff, it's huge. Just look in the mirror and I'm amazing. I'm going to have an amazing day today. I'm going to succeed today.
And
Whether if
as
it's
it
something small, it doesn't have to be something big, everyone. Small attainable goals is all
right,
you
and
need. You stack them
as
and
you
then it
keep
becomes
saying
something
it,
bigger.
yeah. As you keep saying it, you believe it. And then once you believe it, you make it happen. You make it true.
100%, man. 100%, Louis. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So, what do you feel people complain too much about these days?
I don't know. try to focus on myself, my relationship, my kids, my family, because the world
Well, how
is
about
really
this? Do you
broken right now.
find yourself complaining, about certain things too much and then gotta catch your
I'm 53 years old, so I've turned into my dad and I complain about everything. The government's screwed up. The president is this, the president should have done that, Congress should have done this. I've become my dad. Hear them complain about so many things. Oh, the younger generation, they don't think about this. I'm like, wow. So I'm just living life, enjoying everything, and enjoying my wife, enjoying everything. I work for the government. I teach part time, and I think that's what I like the most is teaching. I'm mentoring, probably.
what are you mentoring or what are you teaching?
Computer science and cybersecurity.
Oh, nice. That is that something that really interests you, though?
I've been doing it for a long time. Yeah,
So is that
I
something
just
that you were doing in the military as well before
yeah yeah
left the military?
yeah.
Nice.
I was
Some top secret stuff, eh?
yeah yeah for the National Security Agency. Yeah yeah.
Nice. So that can be fun. It probably can be daunting at times though too, and full can get you anxious, I bet too.
Oh yeah yeah. And you are you diagnosed with anything or?
I just have ADHD myself.
Oh
That's what I'm
wow.
diagnosed with. And I sometimes get reading on Dr. Google, and
Yeah.
then I start thinking, all right, well, maybe I'm this, maybe I'm that. Well, they haven't told me that yet, Chris. So we're not anything but what I've been diagnosed with.
Yeah, and you hit on something there, and I think it's really difficult to try and make one sort of determination for the masses. We're so different in the way we think. We're so different in our chemistry, our DNA, and everything that sometimes one classification really doesn't fit.
It's true. One classification does not fit sometimes, Louis. But I find if I take my medication on a daily basis, I definitely know when I don't take my medication. My focus is off. I'm just my thoughts get really wandering. But one thing
Yeah,
that I've learned from different people in content creation and stuff like that, when I have these thoughts or all these different things going on in my head, I write it down in the my creation or my orphanage of thoughts and stuff like that. And then I can write it down and go back to it after, and maybe it'll be a piece of content that I'll create or something with it too.
yeah. I think there's a touch of insanity with the touch of genius. There's a reciprocity for everything, a reciprocal for everything. When you
Oh,
have a touch of
100%.
genius, there's got to be some touch of insanity associated with it, because you can't just have everything good and exceed in one thing and not be bad in another. There has to be a reciprocal.
Oh, for sure. And I'm not going to be perfect. No one's ever perfect, and I'm never going to be perfect. Some days I like to think I'm perfect, but then that's where the vanity comes in, and you have to reel yourself back in too, because sometimes I can be very vain,
Yeah.
and I got to catch myself today.
Well, as
That
humans, we're
ego really
selfish.
starts creeping in.
Yeah, as
Yeah,
humans, we're
and I
selfish.
really had to learn. I am very selfish. I still am very selfish to this day. I got to learn to be more selfless.
And the problems that we have as humans, because we're so selfish, we have this conflict with what we want and what we need, what we think or need or feel. There's that conflict. When there's death, we want that person back. But in our heads, we know they stop suffering. And sometimes that conflict between our selfishness and our own thoughts is what gets us into trouble.
For sure. Those thoughts will always get you into trouble. If you're having bad thoughts too, people like Louie and I are talking about, write them down. You'll get them out of your head. Talk to someone about it. Talk to a therapist. Talk to a loved one about it. Just get those feelings out. Don't be ashamed or embarrassed to share your feelings with someone. It's okay to share those feelings.
It's okay to say you're not alone. I know there's others out there that think like I do, you do, so forth. So when I think someone does, when they feel like that no one understands them or they think they're alone and there's nowhere else to go and they've tried everything, that's when the real deep thoughts of running away, letting go, the final end of doom. We need to avoid that.
100%. We do need to avoid that and don't put someone down for having bad thoughts or
It's
talking about their
okay.
feelings.
It's
It's
okay.
okay.
Yeah,
It
it's
is.
like I tell everybody when they say they get depressed or they have bad thoughts, I said, "It's okay to have that. Everybody's got them. Just don't act on it. Your actions and your thoughts are just two totally different things."
I mean, your thoughts are just thoughts, and
Right.
the part that you need to control, you sometimes you can't control your thoughts, but you can control your actions. You know,
Exactly.
think before you speak, like that old saying is too.
Right.
Sometimes I don't do that either to this day.
I don't think a lot of us do, but sometimes we just got to slow it down, especially those of us that are ADHD, bipolar, where our mind's going 100 miles an hour.
Sometimes 100 miles a second, I swear.
Yes, I'm sure you got
It's
plans within plans for everything you're going to do within the day.
try to, or sometimes I'll be talking to someone and I'll be thinking about what I need to do next and how I'm going to do it and how I'm going to create this instead of
Right.
just focusing on the task at hand. And
But
then I
that's who
forget
we
what the
are.
hell I was doing.
And I was mentoring a young student the other day at work, and he opened up to me that he's got bipolar and he's got all these things. And I said, you know what? Try and do what I do. Because you have the ability to multi-think, multitask, and so forth in your head, use it to your advantage rather than a crutch. It's a gift rather than, I don't know what the opposite of a gift would be, but it's a gift. Use it for something positive. Use that multitasking to handle many things at work. And you can. Try not to just focus on one thing at work and let all the negativities take control of you with all those thoughts. Refocus. We are who we are, and it's a gift. It's not a burden.
But not at all. Use your superpowers to your advantage, everyone.
Right.
We all have them.
And it's like my wife's superpower is I'm a thinker. I'm a deep thinker. But she is so in tune with feelings and emotion that sometimes she'll tell me that I said or did something that probably hurt somebody's feeling and I didn't even know it. So we complement each other with our thoughts and our feelings and everything. And we're mentally ill, but we use those as our
She almost
trophies.
sounds like an empath.
Yeah, yeah.
I get
So
put in place, and I get put in place by my partner all the time too. Chris, I don't think you should have said that. Did you really think before you spoke? Did you think about what you just said and why you said it and those types of things? She gets really in tune with emotions and in check and stuff like that too.
so she compliments you too.
To an extent, sometimes she gives me
Yeah.
shit.
That's from your perspective. That's what I tell my wife. We joke about that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So,
But
so
man,
what strategies? Sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm just so stoked that you feel like a manic coming on. So I got to slow my thoughts down right now.
Fair enough. I'll ask you another question, then you can slow those thoughts down and answer it.
Sure.
What strategies do you use to calm yourself down when you're overcome with anxiety, Louis?
So I tell you, everything with my disorder is linked to sleep. We need to have 6 to 8 hours of undisturbed sleep. And if our anxiety is out the window and we don't sleep well, our brain cannot relax either. Our anxiety cannot relax. Our thoughts cannot relax. Our brain needs time to reset too in sleep. So for me, sleep regulation is the most important thing for me. And that is my biggest trigger for PTSD and manic. It may be different for somebody else, but for me, that's a big part of it. And a lot of people that have PTSD, war trauma, or so forth, when they've read the book, they understand that. And I've been analyzing myself for so long that I try to look at the root of the problem rather than a symptom because you can fix a symptom, but that's a band aid fix. What is the root of it? That's what I need to do. So I look for the root of my issue. And for me, it's sleep.
Sleep's huge for like lots of mental illnesses and stuff like that. And if
Right.
you don't get that sleep, it really throws you off for the next day, or you could be groggy, tired, don't want to
Right.
get up, those
But
types
those
of
of
things.
us, yes, but those of us with bipolar or even yourself, ADHD, it takes it up a notch. We're programmed to just take it up there and keep functioning. So we are in a fight
Oh, yeah.
situation. Our brain is in a fight type mode, whereas others will stand or flee. So our
Yeah.
brain is just going on, you know?
And then sometimes my mind will just wander and I just don't even go to sleep. And I just, all right, I'm going to go do this now. I'm going to go do that
Right,
now. And I
right.
was before you know it, it's, now 2 in the morning and I haven't been to bed yet. But sometimes it'll be like scrolling on the phone and be like, where the hell did I just get lost into? Like down this rabbit hole of ridiculousness. I had to look something up, then that looking this at certain thing up led me to this thing. Oh, this looks cool. Let's look at this article. And
That's your ADHD getting control of you. And it's
oh
easy to
yeah.
do because that's who we are.
Yeah.
So I have
If
to
I sometimes if I could put that mind to work and sometimes it's not in the greatest spot. When I get going and when I get focused, I get hyper focused. I get manic as well.
Right.
And
If you're
let's
excited
just go
about
balls to
something,
the wall.
right, if you're
Yeah.
excited about something, you don't even have to worry. It could be just like a kid, a little boy, excited to shoot fireworks the next day, you don't sleep, and that's the way.
I'm like that sometimes too. The sad case part about it, I don't like to talk about my past or whatever, but honestly, I would get excited for payday only
Yeah.
because I knew I could get tons of drugs. This is
Oh,
back in my addict days,
I
and
see
I
it, I
wouldn't
would.
sleep. I'd even wake. I'd set an alarm because I knew when the money would drop in my bank account, and I would be up and ready at the drug dealer's house or at the dope house or the. I was just like insanity, but those are the things. But today, I get excited to get up and I'm gonna do this podcast or I got this going on today or we just get excited to go create content, those types of things now.
And I gotta be honest with you, I contacted you a couple of months ago, and I've been so excited, and I've had to regulate my sleep and all the other stuff. My wife, she can tell when I need to go to sleep, and she helps me. I got my own regimen. When I feel myself getting excited about something, I'll exercise till I'm really tired physically, and then I'll take some sleeping pills that help that I get from the VA, and then I regulate my sleep, and I'm calmed down. I get my thoughts back together again, and I find myself getting excited. I do what works for me, and I think that's the
Exercise
key.
is huge, man.
And I think everybody should find what works for them, and don't let somebody else dictate it for you. What you do and what you need, but as long as it's positive, loving, and doesn't affect others in a highly negative way.
Exactly. It's just like recovery from drugs and alcohol or whatever you're addicted to, whatever the case may be. Do what works for you, you know. What there's no linear path to recovery for anything, to be quite honest. If
Right.
someone tells you there is, they're full of shit.
And, and on my site, on Facebook, I got a group page. I had these two individuals fighting because I have a marketing company that have taken up the task to try and help me, and taken a big part of the bill. I got online to try and see how to market this book, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm still in a manic. I sent the letter to my wife, and I'm trying to find a way to market this book because it helped my cousin, it helped a war buddy of mine. I'm like, I need to help other people out. That was my goal then. I'm trying to get my mind off of my wife's actions and thoughts and everything. I'm trying to survive my own downward spiral and trying to stay afloat. So I get online, and this company I find, and this guy asked me in a chat, what is your book about? And this, and I said, how much does your services cost? And he says, what's your book about? I told him. And he says, really? He says, there's nothing out there like that. I said, yeah. So then I sent him the first paragraph of the book, and he chats and puts in the chat, can I call you up? I have to talk to you. So he calls me up, and he is in tears crying because the first opening paragraph, every man and person has been in that situation, and he's mentally ill himself, and he just feels this need to just talk. And we talk just like you for 3 hours. And next thing, he's the head of this whole project and so forth, and he's trying to get the book marketed and campaign and so forth. But man, it costs money, a lot of money. You'd think I didn't think that writing a book was going to be so expensive if you want it to be successful. So these guys are going to help me generate a Kickstarter project just to try and get the book out to the masses because he feels and understands the guys that I got to give a shout out to content development pros, especially Alex Lynn. They want to create a world movement of mental health and discuss the things and try to unprivatize a lot of the issues and get the issues at the table on a global scale because the book has helped save some marriages already in other countries.
That's
So
amazing, man.
yeah, but
I'm
but
really
I
happy to
can't
hear that.
believe how much it costs just to do a public release in a well-known newspaper, you know.
Yeah, it's not cheap. Advertising isn't
No,
cheap, man. Marketing's not cheap,
no.
brother.
No, but that's what's happening too with mental health. All these people are these therapists. It's become a huge business where they think their program is better than someone else's.
Exactly.
You choose what works
Exactly.
for you, your health. But the caveat I throw into that is because me and my wife are together, we choose what's good for me because she should have input too. Because us with mental illness, we can be very manipulative for what we want, even to our providers.
I love it, man. I love it. Keep pushing, keep advocating for yourself, everyone. If you don't advocate for yourself, you're never going to get it,
Right,
especially with getting on the right meds. If
right,
something's not working, what worked for Louis may not work for Chris. So
right.
I've had to advocate for myself to my doctor. And if you don't use your words, use your voice, you're never going to get anywhere in life because they're just going to keep throwing pill after pill at you. I find these days,
Yeah,
that one doesn't work.
since you brought that up, it took me 3 years with the VA healthcare system to find the right cocktail for my PTSD. When I finally got to that point where I knew what worked for me, I became a shell of a person. So I started working on exercise, weaning myself off. So I have these mental things that I work with every day. When I know I'm in good headspace and everything, when it came time to the situation with my wife, when I was going down a spiral, went to the VA, told them what medicines I actually need and how they work with me. I took them just to get me stable again. And I had to work at myself to bring myself out of that shell and get to that norm of where I want to be in my head, in my relationship with my emotions, and not be a shell of a person. And I go through that every day. And sometimes, and this is where the bad thing happens. So I get to the point where I know I think it's working for me and I feel better and I get off, and then I can go down that spiral right again. So I got to stay on my meds that I know that keep me stable. And then when I go to a certain manic state or something, I got to take this other med that supplements what I'm taking so I can get back down to the level where I want to be. It's
That's
hard
amazing.
work. Yeah.
I bet. I bet it's not easy. Putting nothing. Life isn't easy. Life isn't
No,
all peaches and roses and unicorns and rainbows.
no, no. And
They never
mental
said
health
life
is
would be
part of
easy.
that. There's
Yeah,
nothing
taking care of
peachy and rosy
yourself,
about.
taking care of your mental health is
Yeah.
huge.
There's many a person that has cried themselves to sleep within the first 3 chapters of the book. The first chapter is just a description of me and my wife, how we got there, and how I analyze each disorder that her and I have in unison together. And then chapter 2, it just starts going from there, and it's nonstop.
That's amazing, man. And for the people out there, where before we go, Louis, where can everyone find your book? Where can everyone find Louis if they want to follow him?
So right now, the book is on Amazon Prime. It's a notebook of love, my story on mental health. Working on getting on other platforms such as Barnes& and Noble, Kobo, and others. But you can see all the links on my Instagram, which is LA Trivino, Latrivino, and you will see it's on Goodreads, 5 stars. It's the majority of 5 stars on Amazon. One person put 1 star, and I'd like to think that was my wife when she read it in her state. But it could have been a bot, somebody. But everyone's just giving it, their 2 cents worth, and whether it be they learn something about family unit, whether they learn something about unconditional love, or whether they learn that it's a romantic book of unconditional love, or they learned how to deal with PTSD, their addictions or whatnot. It's a plethora of things from a family unit, from my perspective as a man, to save my marriage.
That's amazing, man. And if anyone's looking to check it out, go check out Louis' Instagram. Follow him on Instagram. I'll drop all the links and everything to this in the show notes in the episode here. Make sure you check out Louis. Check out his book.
Man, I love your
His struggles
Instagram.
with mental health. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it, man. And check out Chris's Instagram too at
Yes,
Depths
yes,
of
I
Dark
love
Side.
your Instagram. I love it. I always love your stories, and I love the family unit. That's how we get through this mental health, is a family unit of loving and understanding.
100%, man. It's about showing up for one another, being supportive of one another, not letting one another down. So you're going
Right.
to have your bad days. You're going to have your good days. They're not all going to be easy peasy. But if you can show up for the people on the good days, you got to be able to show up for them on the bad days too.
Man,
Well,
love you,
thanks
man.
again for
Love you. You
thank you very much, man. I appreciate you coming on the show today, Louis, sharing a little bit about your story. And make sure you go check out Louis's book, everyone.
Yes,
Thanks
thank
again.
you.
You're welcome, Louis.